because we want to show our support for these fantastic future world champions here at Whilton Mill for the 2017 FAB-Racing British Mini Bikes Championship.
It is go, go, go!
This is the FAB-Racing British Mini Bikes Championship.
So next out on track, it is the Senior Mini Moto race, and we are currently approximately 10 minutes behind schedule. So for those people, for the benefit of the people here at the track, if you are lucky enough to get a schedule before the weekend, you might like to know that we are roughly 10 minutes behind track as of yet. Incidentally, Roger Keys and the race control team do want you to download the Mixlr app. That's MIXLR app. Find the FAB-Racing profile on there, and you can receive direct text updates from race control, critical text updates, just so that you're up to date. So the grid for this second race in the Senior Mini Motos will be brought to you by Danmar, and once again our commentator Alex Raby.
Race 2 then of the Senior Mini Motos. First time out, Will Howarth coming in second to Richard Holmes-Williams. In the context of the series standings overall, it's Will Howarth who leads the way, and quite comfortably so as well, on 240 points, ahead of Matt Birkin on 169. Closer fights further down the order though, between Birkin and Payne over second. 6 points is the gap there, and then a real close one for fourth position. 4 riders in the mix, separated by just 2 points coming into this race number 2 of the Senior Mini Motos at round 6 here in Whilton Mill. Richard Holmes-Williams, the other rider to watch out for on the 126 bike, making his third appearance of this 2017 campaign. Obviously his absence in some of the rounds leaving him out of contention in terms of the championship, but providing a real foil to Will Howarth in race number 1 yesterday. So this is race 2 in the Senior Mini Motos, the top 3 from race 1 lining up in the top 3 positions on the grid. Richard Holmes-Williams on the outside of the front row, Will Howarth on the inside of him. The second row of the grid will be made up by Brandon Payne and Matt Birkin. Payne who finished third in race 1, and Birkin who finished directly behind him. Fifth on the grid, Paul Nicholls, currently fourth in the championship, involved in that four-way squabble with Justin Bainbridge, who sits alongside him, and Mark Payne, who sits directly behind Bainbridge in P8. Seventh place on the grid, Andy Whedon, who had a good race result in race 1. Rounding out the top 10, Ryan Grant and Bernie Hook. And watch out for Josh Data trying to come through from 11th position as well. He's been a solid scorer in the first 5 rounds of this 2017 campaign. But you would expect it to be between Richard Holmes-Williams and Will Howarth, who were the top 2 in race number 1 yesterday.
Well, it was a great battle between the pair of them yesterday. The gap between those two, only 1.453 of a second. So it was quite close between the pair of them. Some good dicing. I'm expecting more of the same, Alex, and certainly the midfield as well, also going to be quite tight indeed. You've got the likes of Mark Payne and Andy Whedon having a great battle at the end. They were only separated by less than a second, so, you know, there's great battles up and down throughout the course of the field.
And Payne versus Birkin as well, who start off the second row of the grid. It's interesting to note that the positions broadly in race number 1 followed the pattern of qualifying, and we do find ourselves obviously with the same grid for race number 2. Such is the format, where the qualifying really is vital in FAB-Racing, because it determines your starting position not only for race 1 but for races 2 and 3 as well. The riders just making their way round on this warm-up lap before we get underway with race number 2 in the Senior Mini Motos. Remembering that Will Howarth, the current championship leader, starts on pole position, having extended that series lead in race 1 here yesterday. It's the first race of the day for these Senior Mini Motos riders. Howarth, Holmes-Williams the front row, Payne, Birkin the second row, Nicholls, Bainbridge the third row, Whedon, Payne row 4, Grant, Hook rounding out the top 10, Josh Data and Nick Bennett, who've each had good performances in various different races of this 2017 campaign, starting outside of the top 10 on the grid. Richard Holmes-Williams just settling into position second off the line. once the riders are ready to go, then we will get underway with race number 2. The tension builds then for the first senior mini-motos race of the day after race 1 that was closely fought with less than 4 seconds separating the top 4. Will we see similarly close action in race number 2? Starting marshal moving away then. The riders will watch for the lights to come on and then be withdrawn. As we go racing with the senior mini-motos, good start this time from Will Howarth, who is first away. Richard Holmes-Williams settling into second place. So it's Will Howarth who finished runner-up in race number 1, who's made the superior start this time around as they make their way over to the far end of the circuit, still broadly in a group together.
Yep, indeed, it's a great start, pretty much a clean start by everyone, although person in second place is dropping back quite a few positions. Actually, it was a great start there for Will Howarth, but have they managed to get going again?
Problems for Richard Holmes-Williams, who is trying to urge the bike forward in a straight line, but has already dropped half a dozen positions. Keeps looking around himself. Through the turns he seems okay, but he's got no straight line speed whatsoever. He's being swallowed up by the pack, and he's about to get past now by Nick Bennett. Bennett coming through. Nick Bennett was all the way down in 12th position, so that shows you the extent to which Richard Holmes-Williams has dropped out of it. He's almost at the back of the field now, just 4 places from last position. So we were setting ourselves up for a fight between Will Howarth and Richard Holmes-Williams, and Holmes-Williams is out of it with mechanical problems. Will Howarth then blasting away up front. Brandon Payne in second position, again renewing that rivalry with Matt Birkin that we saw in race number 1 yesterday. And Paul Nicholls has obviously gained the advantage of that retirement from Richard Holmes-Williams to move up to 4th position. Bernie Hook, the biggest winner of the opening lap, coming through from 10th to 5th.
Yeah, it was a great start for him as well. It's interesting. It's a shame really for Richard because he did very well yesterday, obviously winner of the first race. It's a shame how fortunes can contrast quite so much. Hopefully he can get that repaired for the third race, although I think he is still circulating out there. So.
Yeah, running around in 14th position at the moment, which
and in fact, as we say that, looks very slow coming out of turn number 7, but he is going again, so maybe it needs a Control-Alt-Delete moment and just needs a bit of resetting. Sometimes, it's funny, isn't it, how these things can happen?
It's certainly an intermittent problem, and one that's affecting him in a straight line, which is not affecting him coming round the turns, because actually he looks to have quite good pace coming round some of these sharp corners, and then suddenly they get onto a straight and they all blast away from him. He is back up and running again now, though, as you said, but looking at the timings of 1:06 on that previous lap, compare that to a 56-second lap that he did to qualify in P2. Will Howarth having no such problems, 57.5 on lap number 2. He's extended his leading margin to over a second for the first time, ahead of Brandon Payne in second, and actually the top 5 all pretty spread out. The closest battle on the circuit at the moment for P5 between Bernie Hook on the number 6 bike and Mark Payne directly behind him.
And as they go through the left and the right up towards the boot, 3 riders almost astern. Fantastic stuff as they're about to come out of the pit bend to make lap 3 out of 8.
And that's Nicholls, Hook and Payne all in a group together, and it's Payne with the orange livery who's made his way past Bernie Hook for P5 up to the far end of the circuit once again. So Mark Payne making his way through the field pretty well as well, having come through from 8th on the grid. He's now up into 5th place at the expense of Bernie Hook, and quite clearly going after Paul Nicholls. Nicholls under severe pressure here, looking left and looking right to see that Mark Payne is right on his tail. Payne is going to have a go here through the infield section, diving down to the inside line, completely alongside. He can't quite get through, and holding on to the place at the moment at least, it's Paul Nicholls in 4th position.
Some fantastic straight line speed he demonstrated though. So he had some fantastic straight line speed going up the inside, coming into the final couple of corners into the boot, almost made it, but in fact he looks like he's just about to lose 5th position, so all of a sudden gone from hero to 0.
Watch out for Hook as well, as you said, as he tries to make his move down the inside line. He's killing his own momentum, and that enables Bernie Hook to come back at him. At the moment it's Paul Nicholls who holds P4. Had to set a new personal best on that previous lap just to keep the 2 riders who are directly in his trail behind him. He's not
Up the
kept them behind for
inside.
long. Mark Payne comes through then to take 4th position. Nichols relegated down to P5. Bernie Hook starting to drop back from the pair of them ever so slightly. But while they squabble with one another, this trio, they've got Justin Bainbridge starting to gain. Bainbridge, who dropped back from 6th position on the grid, is now recovering.
And as you say, 4-bike battle now for 4th position, so it's looking fantastic indeed. And it's great to see just how one lap you can do really well. And in fact, Mark Payne, as you were saying, has in fact got through. His superior straight line speed has just really helped him, especially around here, Whilton Mill, where it's just such a high-speed circuit.
And Nichols is now under trouble from Bernie Hook trying to come through. Hook's got a decent run off the final turn. Can he make a move into turn 1? No, not close enough. So it's still Payne who holds on in 4th position, having made that pass on lap number 5, ahead of Paul Nichols for 4th and 5th places. Bernie Hook in 6th. Justin Bainbridge trying to go with them. Half a second back from that group of 3 riders, and then a gap behind him and some respite. Looking at the standings, Josh Data all the way down in 9th position, and Nick Bennett losing a place on that previous lap to Chris Yeomans. He drops out of the top 10, so not a good race at the moment for Nick Bennett.
Okay. So, so as we continue on, we've got 3 laps left to go in this race. Again, another 8-lap race. Slower game for Richard Holmes-Williams up at Christmas Corner. And in fact, it almost looked like he's pulling off now, I'm afraid to say. Just having lots of issues with that bike. It's a shame to see. But again, hopefully better.
For the moment, he's still running, and actually, bizarrely, a new personal best on the previous lap, but he's something like 8 seconds a lap off his normal pace. Very unusual situation, but clearly just by finishing the race, he's entitled to a couple of championship points if he can get into a decent enough position. So it's still worth him trying to come round to complete the race, because you pull off, you definitely get nothing. You continue on, you may have a chance of claiming a position. He's coming through the infield section at the moment, clearly compared to his usual pace, well adrift, and that's enabling Will Howarth to run almost untroubled up front on towards the checkered flag.
And I think he's had a slight tumble as he's pushing his bike off the circuit just to get it out of the way. He's clearly frustrated with the efforts that have been going on. He's been trying his absolute best, but it's made it ever so he's got off the circuit anyway, so it's a little bit clearer. But with just 2 laps to go, Will Howarth, 3.4 seconds, a great lead for him.
Howarth then dominating in race 2 of the senior mini motos, 4 seconds clear of Brandon Payne. Matt Birkin having seen off the attentions of Mark Payne, who still holds 4th position ahead of Paul Nichols and Bernie Hook. A new personal best on that previous lap from Hook, and it is really closing up now for 5th, 6th positions in particular. Justin Bainbridge dropping slightly back on lap number 6, but on lap 7 he's closed in as well, and we've got a 3-rider squabble for 5th, not too far behind Mark Payne in 4th position either.
No, and it's fantastic to see, isn't it? Just in the straight line, the straight line speed that Mark Payne has got is great to see. But then as he goes through the infield corners in the complex, he just really struggles with his pace through there. So evidently it must be he set that up for straight line speed, which is benefiting him in certain ways, but then it does drag him back into this battle as it moves for 5th and 6th place as well.
Checkered flag time for Will Howarth. Contrasting fortunes for Richard Holmes-Williams, who only just got into his 8th and final lap before Howarth came through. Of course, Chris Yeomans, that you spotted retiring earlier in the race, enabled a position gain for Richard Holmes-Williams, so he's circulating down in 13th position, and that looks likely to be his finishing position now. He's the last of the lead lap runners. Howarth taking the checkered flag then by a 5-second margin over Brandon Payne. Matt Birkin 4 seconds further back. The closer race in that one was for 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th positions. Justin Bainbridge coming through eventually to 6th. Mark Payne and Paul Nichols finishing ahead of him. It was an entertaining scrap involving Bernie Hook as well, who eventually finishes 7th. Rounding out the top 10, Ryan Grant, Josh Data and Nick Bennett.
Thank you very much. Alex Raby and Dan Marr commentating on the second senior minimoto race of the weekend. Hello and good morning. From Whilton Mill, if you're tuned in live online, we are streaming all day live coverage, well, for the morning sessions. Then we've got lunch at approximately 1:10, depending on whether we're running ahead or behind or some such. And yes, up next, the Junior LC40 second race of the weekend. They should be heading out on track very shortly. So, a few people have been sending in their messages of support and goodwill. Julie Holmes saying, come on, Richard Holmes Williams, we're listening from Corfu. Saying, we love you. Oh, thank you very much, Julie. And also, Brian Miller has been in touch saying, go Tractor Boy. Indeed. Yes, thank you very much, Brian, who's listening. And Amy has been in touch, replying to Brian, really, saying, Tractor Boy, what's going on? Your mechanic shouldn't be in Corfu. Well, it's all going off on Twitter and on Facebook on the live streams, and do get in touch with us. And share as well, because it all adds to the championship, and you can show your support that way. Sharing is caring, don't forget. And you can get your messages into us. Incidentally, if any riders want to pop up to the commentary box after their races and let us know how your races have got on, and let us know what you won and how you did it. If you had a particularly good race, you can pop up to the commentary box. Alex and Dan will be waiting to have a chat to you, and they are upstairs on the top floor by race control, by the grey cabins, just by the start-finish line. Very easy to spot. You can maybe even give them a wave if you're on the grid. So
Not
the
that type of wave.
Junior LC40s are next out on track, and they're about to come out next. Alex Raby and Dan Marr are both here with us. And guys, have you been enjoying the racing so far? It sounds like it's been fantastic action.
So far, so good. Hope that those listening from Corfu are enjoying themselves as well. That doesn't sound like a bad destination to be in at the moment either, particularly considering that we here, just so that those of you who are in Corfu can gloat, are under some massive grey clouds at the moment, with the wind picking up the flags.
That's what it is.
Yes, sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah, absolutely, Leicester. It is boiling hot. We're suffering, melting, and all that tan. That's incredible.
Well, it was quite warm yesterday, to be fair. So it's sort of mixing fortunes for the weather, but the Great British weather, you got to love it, eh?
No, not really. Okay, out onto circuit now for race number 2 in the Junior LC40 category. Yesterday it was Casey O'Gorman who took the victory in race number 1 to further extend his championship leading margin. It's now up to almost 100 points. 385 points for Casey O'Gorman, his nearest championship rival, Ross Maguire, on 285. Those two isolated in terms of their championship results. In 3 of the 5 rounds so far this season, Casey O'Gorman has been completely undefeated, and he only dropped 5 points.